Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder of Publish Your Purpose, and I am sitting here with the infamous Tony Ferraiolo as we talk about your book launch today. How are you, Tony?
I'm good. I'm excited. It's good to see you. How are you?
I am great. And I'm always excited during a book launch interview because it means that we're finally at the point in the process where we can share with the world that your book is here. However, I feel like, oh, look at that little gem. Just
Oh my God, I hugged it when I got it, but okay, go ahead.
and probably cried too, I imagine, knowing you.
Yes.
Yes. I think in this case, what's really cool is that we have known each other for a very long time at this point, and we have collaborated on your artistic expressions of transgender youth books.
Yep.
And I remember when the idea of you writing a memoir was just like a little kernel of an idea, and that was a really long time ago. So the fact that we're here feels like a miracle.
We actually, if you remember correctly, we tried to start it, and I would type a little bit, and then you would say, "Give me more of this," and it got too overwhelming for me, so I said, "I can't do it," because there was a lot of pain involved in it. But then here we are, so many years later.
Yeah. So I feel like it makes it extra special because I feel like we've birthed this together over the years. So
yeah,
and there's so many ways that I could start, but let's just kind of start with a little bit of who you are for just the general person watching this.
Yeah. So I guess I stepped into myself in 2005 when I realized I needed to transition. I identified prior to transition as a lesbian for many years, but I never really felt that I was whole, like there was something missing. And when I realized I was trans, a lot of people, Jen, say to me, is there really a big difference in your life? And I just say it simply that prior to transition, every night I sat and wondered if I wanted to live the next day. And then after transition, I can't wait until tomorrow. And I'm telling you that my life just began after I was able to step into this world as Tony. When I started doing that, I just happened to notice that there were kids who were suffering. And I said, I didn't know any trans people when I transitioned. They probably don't know anybody. So I started support groups in New Haven in 2008, which are still running today. It's amazing. Kids are getting younger and younger and more adorable, and we're helping them through this journey that sometimes can seem overwhelming for a family. So I'm really known for the work that I do with transgender and non-binary kids and their families. But I'm also an artist who, that's how artistic expressions of transgender youth idea came up, because as a kid, the way I let go of my emotion, the way I stopped self-harming was through art. And I wanted to find a space for these kids to express themselves, because sometimes we expect children to verbally tell us how they feel when they don't have the words. And sometimes adults can't even bring up the words if they're in pain. So artistically, it's easier to express yourself. So I've been doing that. And I'm a certified life coach. I've been a certified life coach since 2010. And of course, my niche is trans and non-binary kids. I'm also a trainer, speaker. I have a full-time gig, and I'm proud to say that I'm the director of Healthcare Advocate International's Youth and Family Program. My dream job. You've known me forever. I would say that all the time. I just want to direct a youth and family program. I said it enough that the universe said, "Shut the hell up! Here, take it. Go ahead." Yeah. So that's basically, what I do. And this project was not easy, but I'm just so proud that it's done and it's in my hands. It's crazy.
Yeah. And can we talk a little bit about the book? So it's Finding My Way Out of the Darkness, How I Found Self-Love and Acceptance. So just even starting with the title, like what was your, I guess, inspiration, or like, how did you come up with the title? Because I feel like that's important.
Yeah. So when I thought about what the book should be called, I thought about my journey. And I lived in darkness for many, many years. And when you read the book, everyone, you will probably start saying, oh my God, this guy really had a hard time. And it's funny because I tell people, you had a rough life when you have to have a content warning at the beginning of your memoir. I mean, honestly, but I walked out of that darkness and came into the light when I started seeing myself and loving myself and giving myself permission to be happy, that I was worthy of happiness. Sometimes when you sit in the pain, and for many years as a child, I feared being killed, or just really severely hurt. That was my life. Um, but when you live in the darkness, it's like duality. You know, you won't appreciate sunny days if it didn't rain every once in a while, right?
Mhm.
So I wouldn't know the light unless I was in the darkness. And a lot of my journey through my childhood really set me up to be the person I am for trans and non-binary kids.
Yeah. And then what I think is important on the equal is the subtitle of how I found self-love and
Yeah.
acceptance. So
Yeah.
share a little more about that too.
Yeah. So I really started finding self-love and acceptance after I transitioned. And my again, it was like I was reborn. Okay. But I also had to heal my heart. And I had to heal my heart through forgiveness and a lot of self-help. I mean, when your heart and your soul is broken, you have to be the one who repairs it. Right? You can't go to a store and buy something, you can't take a pill. It's really something that you have to do. So I in the book I talk about Tara Brock, who really was, you know, the person who I was sitting there at one of her retreats, and I was like, wow, like this all makes sense. It's okay if I'm happy. Like you know, like happiness when you're not happy for a very long time feels very uncomfortable, and I would self-sabotage myself not to be happy. So, you know, so learning that there's space in my heart for forgiveness, and not everybody that I have forgiven knows that they're forgiven, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
forgiveness is really not about the other person, it's about me and my heart and my healing.
And you have a line that I've heard you say many times, but everyone is worthy of happiness. I feel like that is an evolution to get to a place to even acknowledge that for ourselves, let alone acknowledge that everyone, regardless of any differences, backgrounds, etc., is also worthy of it.
Yeah, I mean, a human being is worthy of happiness. But if we don't think that we're worthy of it, it's not going to come in. We have to open up ourselves and listen, like happiness to me doesn't come like inner peace is different than happiness. Happiness is, oh my God, look at that. That makes me happy. Oh, Jen just gave me $1 million to do my next book. Oh my God, that makes me happy, right? But
Yeah.
inner peace comes from inside,
Mhm.
right? You have to create that. So to me, when I was able to give myself the inner peace and that space to breathe, I was able to accept happiness,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. What was the process like? Because as you already mentioned, there's a trigger warning in the beginning of your memoir. So clearly there's a lot there. What
Yeah,
was the, I guess, whatever aspect of the process you kind of want to talk about? Because I feel like it's a roller coaster for everybody. I
yeah.
think the more significant points of trauma and things like that tend to make that roller coaster, even the peaks and valleys, higher and lower. So I don't know, like what was your strategy, coping mechanism of like actually getting through the writing aspect of this?
Therapy, 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 therapy. Hashtag therapy forever. I had to actually stop writing for a little while when I first started writing because it just brought back so much pain. I didn't hold back with my childhood, and it brought back a lot. So it was really hard. Um, and I'm not kidding. I mean, I know I joked around a little bit, but my therapist was on speed dial. I didn't think that it was. I thought it was, oh, I'm just going to write, you know, my story, and it was just going to be like easy and breezy, and I was going to get through it. And that was not the case at all. I had to take care of myself. I had to know when it was time to stop writing, process everything, and then pick it up again. So I think it took me a little bit longer than usual because I did have to take those breaks. Because now that I love myself, I know when I need self care, and self care is really recognizing when I had to stop writing.
Mm. And then once you got moved through the writing, had the therapist on speed dial, have a self-care routine. Between then and then when you were holding your book in your hand, shrieking with joy is usually what I describe it as. What was that gap of time between? Because there's obviously the writing, which is so traumatic to relive trauma.
Yeah.
But then there's the editing, which is the same continuation of that. But then beyond that, like what was your emotional state between like the hard part of like getting the story out and now having to wait until it's actually in the hands of your readers?
Yeah, I had some self-doubt for a while. I was like, well, this was my biggest obstacle was it's not going to be long enough. Like the book is not going to be long enough. And oh, I have to make sure it's this many pages. I will, if when I write my next book, I will not have that in my mind at all. It is not the quantity of the pages, it's the content of the pages. And so that was one of the things that I was hung up on. But I got really angry. Be honest, I got angry at my life. I got angry because when you're a child and you're going through that, you're just there, and you like I didn't know any difference from the abuse because that's what that's the first thing I remember in my life was being abused. So you don't know any different. But now that I have happiness in my life, I'm like, damn, like I was a kid. How can people treat me like that? You know? And so I did get angry, but my therapist and my friends, and I think a couple of times I kind of vented to you, and everybody got me through it, which was amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge the anger because I think it's an experience that not everyone gets if you haven't written a memoir, is that
Mm.
there's so much reflection and there's so much decision on what stories do I tell, what stories don't I tell, if I tell the story, who's it going to impact, all of
Yeah,
the kind of variables there. And then you have that in totality in the form holding like your pain physically holding it in a book.
yeah,
The anger that can emerge. I had the same very similar experience where I was just like, I don't know if it's anger. I was like just pissy where I was like, why has this been my life? Like, what did I
yeah.
do that created the circumstances for all of these things that have transpired in one human's life? So I remember having that
Mhm.
same level of just reconciling your pain because now you've actually had to like document it and catalog it. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's a powerful experience at the same
It
time.
is because anger is a fueled emotion. So it's either sadness or fear, frustration, but typically sadness or fear. And it did make me sad to read my story or write my story again. You know, that was super hard for sure. And
Mhm.
it's okay. Like I know that was the process, and I'm cool with that process.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, and when I got it, I started reading it again, and I kind of had to stop reading it because I was crying while I was reading it this time because I wasn't trying to like it's different when you're reading it and you're editing it than when you're reading it and you're just reading it. It's done. It's here. And I sat down and I started reading it and I fell apart and I was like, I'm not ready yet to read
Mhm.
it, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
also like when I first started, when I first started writing the book, I was like slamming people in the book, like some ex-girlfriends, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is not about slamming anybody. This is about your life. So I really was very mindful of getting the story across, even though when people hurt me, to not hurt them by my words that I used in the memoir, to be very mindful of that because this is not what this was about. And I'm
Mhm.
all about kindness. And so it was like a light bulb went up and I was like, well, that's not kind. You might want to reword that a little bit.
Yeah. It's part of in my experience, it's part of the writing process though for everybody where the first draft comes out a lot of times with a lot of unresolved emotions, a lot of unresolved pain and anger. And once you start to look at it and come back and you're like, yeah, that's going to blow up that relationship. Is it worth it? No, probably not. So, and
Yeah.
there's also the fine line of what is your story to tell versus what is someone else's story to tell. And finding
Yeah.
that balance is not an easy task either along the way, especially in a memoir.
Yeah. I'm just like, I can't believe, like, I remember when I first signed up and I said, okay, let's do this. The one thing I looked forward to was this moment with you
Mhm.
sitting here and having and being interviewed. Like, that's when I knew that it was done, you
Mhm.
know, and I held on to that. And that really helped me sometimes because, you know, I'm a procrastinator with everything else in my life. You know that. I mean, I do not let things sit, and letting this sit sometimes for self-care, I had to make sure that I didn't feel like I was doing something wrong,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
there was time. There's no deadline on this, but there was at the end for editing and stuff. But when I was creating it, there really wasn't a deadline, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And so as you're sitting here, because I remember that conversation where you're like, I can't wait until we were in this moment. Like, how fun is it that this moment has arrived?
Yeah. Yay.
what are the emotions? Because like right now it's dripping out. It's trickling out to folks. You haven't had your, at least at the time of us recording this, your actual launch party hasn't occurred yet.
Right.
But the relationships, right? Like the relationships with your siblings, with your parents, with exes that might have been mentioned. And, you know, obviously we did all the right things in terms of protecting people's identity, making sure you
Yep.
are writing with kindness. But do you have moments of fear around what have I done? What are people going to think?
Yeah.
Or just like freedom where you're like, the albatross is no longer around my neck?
Yeah. No, I have some fears, especially around my parents. You know, my parents are 86 years old. Um, they weren't great parents, and to say the least, and you'll read about them in the book. And and everybody, like, right now in my life, and it's been like this for probably 10 years, I'm my mother's health proxy. I'm their power of attorney. I bring my mother to her doctor's appointments. I make sure they have, and my other siblings do too, but I'm basically like the one who does most of the stuff for them. And I'll put it to you this way. One of my very good friends, Tony Ann, got a book, and she came over here to go for a walk with me the other night, and she sits down and she says, you're a freaking god. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she says, I read chapter 1. And for you to be able to take care of your parents the way you take care of your parents after what they did to you, she says, I you're a god. You're a god.
Wow.
But what people don't know is that, you know, like, my parents have changed too. They're not, you know, like, they're not the same people they were back when I was a kid. So we all transition, pardon the pun. But I, you know, my therapist said to me once, Tony, listen, you can forgive somebody and still be angry. You know, you can still be angry. And sometimes I do get angry. And when I get angry, I try not to be around them, because I don't think it's cool for them if I start being mean to them because I'm thinking about something they did 30 years ago. I mean, they're in the last stages of their life. I don't want to be around them and be a jerk to them. That's not fair to them. You know, I have a choice whether I want to be around them or not. You know, so I really try to stay in the moment with them, and really care for them the way I would care for anyone else. This might be hard for some people to hear, but I don't see my parents as a mom and a dad. I just don't. There's not that emotional connection. I see them as people that have been in my life, that are at the end of their life, basically. I mean, I can go before them, who knows? But so why not bring them joy and happiness if that's possible now? And it is possible to have joy and happiness with them.
That I feel like this is all such a testament to the therapeutic work that you undertook along the way, and also being a life coach and helping other people with these struggles and challenges, because there's such a deep level of forgiveness that is occurring that I feel like the majority of people are not able to get to. So I feel like it's a huge testament to just your kind of how you show up in the world, generally speaking, which is
Yeah.
love and kindness and compassion and empathy and all of those great characteristics.
Well, kindness has a boomerang effect. Okay. When you're kinder to yourself, you're kinder to others. And when you're kinder to others, you're kinder to yourself. It happens organically. You don't even have to try. So when I'm standing in front of somebody, no matter if it's a room of 1,200 people or just one-on-one, a new person I met, maybe, I always show up as a person that has compassion, because every single person we know is suffering from something. We might not think it's a big deal, but they certainly do. So if we show up for people that way, and we start just with loving kindness, you can't go wrong.
I love that. What are your visions for this? So, you know, imagine you're standing at the, say 3 months from now, maybe 3 weeks. It could be after this conversation. Someone read the book and they were really significantly moved and impacted by it. Like what is the kind of thing that you're hoping that someone's going to say to you?
I hope somebody's going to say to me, I read your book and I didn't feel that I was ever going to be able to get over what happened to me when I was a kid. And now I know I can. And now I know I can find self-love and acceptance. And that just is such an honor, if I can be that person like I am for these kids. A lot of times parents will say, and you probably heard it because we used to hang out with the documentary, was thank you for saving my kid's life.
Mm-hmm.
It's an honor for me to step in and help somebody feel that they have worthiness to live.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And so that's where I see, if somebody comes up to me and says that, that's what I'm hoping, that through my journey, they will have the strength and maybe the courage to really start really tapping into self-love and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
The plan for the book, and I'm going to be honest, because I'm going to say it here because you know how I am. I say it because I visualize it. If I visualize it, that means if I can see it, I could achieve it. This book I need to sell. Oh, by the way, I need to sell 3,300 copies so I can buy my BMW. Just saying. Okay.
Done.
But
You can do it.
I will pitch this to Netflix and Hulu, because they've shown my documentary and my TV show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pitch the book and say, do it one lifetime movie about me or whatever they do. And then I'm retiring.
I think that's a beautiful vision and a beautiful plan.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, between now and retirement,
Yes.
your website has all of the places that people can do the thing. So are you, like, if someone wants to buy your book, do you have a preference for how they go about doing that?
They can visit my website, buy it through my website. They can buy it through Amazon, but website would be my first choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always plug that PSA. Like, when there's an opportunity, buy direct from the author. Always do. Always do.
It helps. It definitely helps. Yeah, I'm excited. We already booked, I think, 4 author talks and then the book launch. And, I'm doing author talks a little bit differently. I don't want to stand there and read from the book. So I'm giving, like, whoever my contact is, I send them a book for no cost. And then they're going to sit with me and we're having an armchair conversation about the book. The reason why I'm doing it that way is because, again, I want somebody to be able to ask questions. I don't want to be reading a chapter about suicide and self-harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that's, it's good to read, but in front of a crowd, I want people to be able to be more engaging with this book,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is that you probably have your own ideas of what takeaways for a reader might be, but we don't really know until the readers are actually reading it. And then they come up to you and they're like, wow, your book did this for me. You're like, that wasn't even an intended impact. And here's something happening. So I love that idea to just kind of give your whomever's talking to you free reign to kind of ask whatever, because you really are, I feel like, the definition of an open book, truly, in all aspects. And I mean that as a positive thing, because there's people who are oversharers, TMI, but I feel like you're just a genuine, sincere, open book about pretty much anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so good. Well, thank you. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to bring up before we depart?
No, but so it's done, Jen. I mean, it's done.
We did it. We finally did it. I feel like there's extra skin in the game on this one because it's been so long working together.
So we have to go out for sushi and celebrate. I'll text you.
Yes, please do. Perfect.
All right, cool.
All right. Thank you so much, Tony. For everyone watching, definitely check out, go to Tony's website, follow him on social, all of the places, all of the things. And I will see you again in the near future talking to another author. Thanks, Tony.
Bye.
Bye.